Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm so excited to make this video because I spent, the 2 weeks or something that it took me to read ACOTAR, which is short for A Court of Thorns and Roses, a book by Sarah Moss. This is a book. I was excited. I was like, I'm going to read something that's like hot and new. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, this book is from 10 years ago. So probably not super relevant anymore, but Romantasy is huge right now. So here is my favorite things about A Court of Thorns and Roses. But Liz, you might be asking, what is ACOTAR even about? It is about a girl, Feyre, and she kills a wolf in the woods, but it turns out that wolf was a fairy in disguise, which she sort of knew but didn't all the way know. And then another fairy kind of, shows up, busts into her house, and tells her that she has to come live with him because of her crime, or he'll kill her. She lives with him for a while, like locked up in his mansion, and ends up falling in love with him because it turns out he's like kind of nice. There is like meanwhile this mysterious threat that is happening that she like overhears conversations about, but doesn't know what that could be. He ends up releasing her to go home. But then she kind of realizes after she goes home that something is very wrong. And then in the last, third or so of the book, she goes on a quest to save Tamlin, the, romantic lead that locked her up in his mansion, from a really evil lady who lives under a mountain. My first favorite thing about this book is that the main character's first stated motivation is resolved in the first 33% of the book. You're introduced to Feyre, and her motivation is like, I need to take care of my family. She is kidnapped or taken hostage by Tamlin, and he like tells her, he's like, don't worry, I took care of them. And she's like, really? And he's like, yes, it's fine. And it comes up occasionally where she's like, I had my important vow, and it's like the only thing that I've cared about, and I've really sacrificed everything to take care of my family, even though they're kind of horrible to me. But nope, still not part of the story. And kind of like I mentioned about families, her family is the worst. Her siblings are the worst. Like they're all like starving to death, but they are just awful to her. And she goes out and she kills this wolf that's also a fairy, but she doesn't know that, but maybe she kind of knows that. And she brings it back, and they're like, give us money, give us food, you suck, we hate your paintings, all this stuff. It's horrible. And I'm like, it is like comedy Cinderella siblings. It's very funny. And there's this other character, Lucian, who lives in the mansion. He's like Tamlin's buddy, I guess. He does like diplomatic missions or something. And he has this whole tragic backstory that Tamlin just delivers as exposition dialogue to Feyre over like 2 pages, and like his siblings tried to kill him. So there is this sort of funny through line of like, your siblings suck ass. But also when Feyre goes back to live with her siblings again, when she goes back, they're like, Tamlin has set them up to be completely like rich. They're back in a mansion. He like did some magic to find some like buried treasure that they had lost in the sea or whatever. And there's this like redemption of the sisters as if they weren't horrible. And it's, I get it. Like being in like horrible poverty and like starving to death is probably not going to make you be your best self. But it is sort of annoying that she goes back and is like, oh, I'm so glad to see my beautiful siblings actualized, by all of their money. To explain my beautiful mask, my next favorite thing about ACOTAR is that the fairies, the like main guy Tamlin, and his buddy Lucian, have masquerade masks glued to their face. And by glued, I mean they're cursed to wear them, which makes them very intriguing, very mysterious. It's very sexy, as you can see. It makes the books like so perfect for Pinterest. Like if you think about all of the like masquerade aesthetic photos you could pin onto a board or whatever you do on Pinterest, I'm not really sure. But there's like a definite vibe, because it has to be a vibe because it's sort of a vibes only book. Some of the fairies, like the ones that work as like servants or whatever in the mansion, and then also Lucian, have like animal masks. So he is a fox, and he's kind of foxy and cunning and all of these things. So like that helps you understand their character a little bit. The actual greatest thing about them having masquerade masks on is that there is a problem to solve, a conflict, if you will. And also, for what it is worth, I have a new appreciation for Tamlin after wearing this because it is extremely uncomfortable. It was hard to put on. I think it's like falling off now because I just touched it. Yep, it sure is. So we're just gonna do this. Hello, everyone. It is not glued to my face. Yeah, this one is like ribbons. And I saw some reviews that were like, I'm so glad this is ribbons and not an elastic band. But it makes it way harder to wear. Like it's hard to put on. A great thing about ACOTAR is that it respects the arts. Painting is fun. The main character paints. And I will get serious for a moment. This was probably the least annoying like character draws or paints book that it could possibly be, because she's like kind of bad at it, or like when it comes up, she's like, I'm not very good, instead of doing the like PETA thing where he's just like perfectly like painting his character in like beautiful. And I'm like, when did he have time to learn this? This is crazy. As everyone knows, fiddling is so sexy. Tamlin does a fiddle, show for Feyre, and she does some sexy dancing because she was drinking some fairy wine, which is very exciting. And also, no famous ruler has ever ignored a crisis while fiddling. So we have no worries there. Tamlin is having this horrible crisis of like there's a curse and we don't know anything about it and we can't do anything about it and we have no agency over the situation because we don't know anything about it. But we do some fiddling sometimes. A great thing about it is that there's a fairy whose power is specifically delivering exposition, like exposition dialogue fairy. They're called surreals. And someone's got to give you the lore. And Feyre goes out and like captures this surreal, which I think is like has to answer your questions or has some kind of situation like that. And it is just like a 3 or 4 page lore dump about the world and the different regions in the world. And like, there are different like fairy factions and they're all like the courts, right? So it's like the summer court, the spring court, the fall court, the winter court, the night court, the day court, all that. But at the same time, who cares? Because you've been locked up in the mansion with Feyre for like a lot of pages. So it's a little like, what does this have to do with me? So it's a good thing that there's this fairy with this power, because otherwise you wouldn't know shit about shit. His claws do what now? Tamlin has an ability, and it is to transform into a beast that I believe is like some sort of cat, bear, maybe has antlers. I might be making that up. I'm not sure. But he can like morph into this monster and he's like super powerful. But a lot of the time, like when Farah is like first there at the mansion, they have like these really tense dinners, like you have to come to dinner because that's where the food is. And then they like sit across from each other at this big long table, and like kind of have a little bit of banter or whatever. And whenever Tamlin gets mad, his like claws come out a little bit. And I swear to God, in like multiple places, it describes that as them sliding out from under his knuckles. And I'm so confused as to what that means, because that sounds like kind of gross to me. And what I picture in my head is like this is your knuckle, right? So does his like pop? It's hard to bend just that part. Does his like pop open and then the claw comes out like this? Because that's gross. It makes me think of like Wolverine, but the claws come out of his fingers. Whereas like if you transform into a beast with claws, I imagine that your own fingernails would probably like grow and get pointy, not that like new claws would slide out from under your knuckles. So that was a thing that just kept being said, that I didn't understand really at all. But you have to consider that having like little claws is like perfect for sexily touching the rim of a goblet. ACOTAR is a horny book. It's kind of Omegaverse coded, and there's nothing like explicit. Like, I mean, well, there is something explicit, but Feyre's not like, I'm a, born an Omega and you're an Alpha. But there is a lot of like, I could smell you, and we're going to mate, and I'm gonna mark you maybe. Also, arguably, like the fuck or die trope of them being at some sort of festival, and it is imperative that Tamlin have sex with someone in order for the crops to grow. So it's not like everyone's gonna die, although if there's no crops, maybe they would starve to death. So it is sort of that, I would categorize that as the fuck or die trope, because it's like, you have to do it. So that's something. I will say, though, that I went into this thinking that it was going to be more pornographic and that there was going to be a lot of sex scenes. There were 2, I think. They weren't particularly pornographic. I wouldn't describe them that way. They're explicit, but they weren't, I don't know. They were fine. I just like, I think that I think that later there are like 4 or 5 books in the series. So I think that there's more as they go on, is what I understand by reputation. But this one is pretty tame. Farah's 19. This is so weird. I don't have a problem with it. That's what I'm not saying that. I'm like, she doesn't act like she's 19, which is just sort of a staple of the genre, I guess. But you have to consider it's very Twilight Core. Was sort of theory crafting here, wondering if Tamlin became 507 years old, but like maturity just like wraps around. Maybe he's like prestiging or whatever, and is like not actually that mature, which is also my theory about Edward from Twilight, is like, you're turned as a vampire when you're 17, and then your like brain is 17 forever. It didn't develop all the way, which I guess makes it weird, because Bella's not going to age. She turned into a vampire, so it's all fine. There is one part in ACOTAR that did make me laugh, which is, I have to explain the curse. The big reveal of the book is that they are cursed to have lost some of their magic, and the masks are stuck on their faces. And the way that they needed to break the curse, or Tamlin had to break the curse specifically, was for someone who has killed a fairy in cold blood because of hatred in their heart, has to fall in love with Tamlin after that happens and then say I love you to Tamlin. So a great thing about that is that Tamlin has in the past sent out all of his like men, his like soldiers, or I don't know if they're soldiers or just members if it's court or regular citizens or whatever it is. He like is like one at a time sending them over the wall to the human world, hoping that they'll get killed, and then he'll be able to fall in love with the person that killed the fairy. And so that is what happened when Feyre killed this fairy. It's like finally one of these guys died so that like they can fall in love. But there's like an aside where it's like, yes, other fairies have been killed, but the problem is that everyone who has killed a fairy thus far has been like either a man or an older woman. And I'm like, Tamlin, you're 507. You're 507 years old, Tamlin. So that's very funny to me. I feel like maybe there's a part of the curse where it's like, it has to be a young woman to have done this, but you know why that is, because Feyre's 19. My favorite thing about ACOTAR is it becomes a different kind of book in the last 100 pages. It is so exciting. The reveal of the curse that I just described to you is so insane, and I have to say, it sure feels like the curse was reverse engineered out of the scenes that the author wanted to happen, right? Like, I feel like she had a very vivid imagining of like fairy in a masquerade mask. You know, main character gets like kidnapped by a fairy because she like committed this crime. But then how do you make that like work backward from that to come up with a curse that makes sense? Because it has all these like very specific things about it that are very funny. But the whole story is that this like horrible evil woman Amarantha has cursed them and has come up with the like terms of the curse. A great thing that we learn after Tamlin has been like kidnapped and taken under the mountain is that you can walk anywhere in 2 days. I think that like the servant that brings Feyre to the mountain, they like walk and Feyre's like, this is gonna take forever. And it's like, nope, we found a hole in the ground and it'll take you right there. We meet the villain. She's very evil, very, very powerful. But she offers to Feyre, because she's, you know, a trickster. She's like, okay, well, I will give you 3 trials. And if you pass the trials, I will lift the curse and free Tamlin, and you're, you know, free to go on your merry way. Also, I'm going to give you a riddle. If you solve the riddle, I will free you immediately, unrelated to the trials, just because I'm so nice. And then we go through these trials, and it's like all of a sudden this is like Feyre. I mean, Feyre has spent the whole book like walking around a mansion and painting pictures and going to like romantic Glen with Tamlin. And then all of a sudden she's in like the mud trenches being chased by like a dune worm, except for the mud. And it's like an action, like crazy action sequence. I think my favorite one is when she's put in the like saw trap, and it's like a pit and the ceiling is like lowering with spikes on it. So she's going to get squished if she doesn't solve a puzzle that it's like 3 levers. But the fun part about that is she can't read. So she can't read the puzzle for us. So we never know what the puzzle is. And the reason that she solves it is because like some other guy is like psychic telling her what the answer is. And she just like pulls it and it's correct. And then she solves the trolley problem. She's like 3 people are brought to her, and it's like, you have to kill these 3 innocent people. And she just like save the world and like free the spring court and Tamlin and all this stuff. And all these people are going to suffer horribly under this evil woman's rule if you don't do this. And she's like, well, okay. And she kills 2 innocent people. And I won't spoil the rest of it because it's so fun. But she kind of, I mean, she succeeds in the trials, woohoo, but then the fairy's a trickster and is like, haha, I didn't say I'd do it immediately, beats her up, she solves the riddle, like saves the day. So that's crazy. Like that is just like, this is a different book to me. And Feyre gets to be a fairy at the end. It's kind of like the part, because she like dies. But it's like when all the Pokemon all gathered around and like cried, and all their tears went to the center, and Ash like resurrected from stone. It's sort of like that, and she became a fairy, so that's fun. And when I said Feyre for the first time out loud, I was like, oh, that sounds like fairy, doesn't it? She ends up with Rysand at the end of the series, which I, like, when I finished ACOTAR, I was like, I am not going to read any more of these. That was so boring. I looked it up. That's all I wanted to know. Rysand is, like, the guy that helped her out during her trials, except he, like, spent some time giving her weird magic booze that, like, she couldn't remember what she had done, which he put her in a weird outfit and she did like sexy dances for him while she was super drunk and then didn't remember. And he also like tattooed her non-consensually. But he's the Dark Lord of the Night. And apparently he's like the end game couple here. I think the funniest like sequel setup at the end of this is that Rysand and Feyre, like, he strikes a deal with her to save her life. And he's the one who helped her with the lever puzzle, by the way. And part of the deal was like, okay, when you get out of this, when you beat the trials, you have to spend 2 weeks a month with me at the night court, like in my mansion. And it reminds me so much of Hunger Games Book 2, where you're like, oh, I wonder what the new premise is going to be for the Hunger Games. Because Katniss, like, she already did the Hunger Games. And it's like, Book 2, she's clearly going to be, like, kidnapped and stuck in this, like, other handsome guy's mansion. We're just doing it all over again. So, yeah. I can't believe this is like the end game guy. Also, as you can see from the caption, this is the fan cast, like most popular fan cast actor for Rysand. I have no idea who he is. I like look him up. He has like an empty IMDb page with like 1 credit for something I've never heard of. So I don't know. I don't know where the fan casters found him, but he makes a great Rysand, I guess. Thank you for watching. This has been super fun. I'm glad that I made this video because otherwise I would have read ACOTAR for nothing. And it was all that kept me going in the last 2/3 of the book. So I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know if it's more fun if you've read ACOTAR or more fun if you haven't. But I will continue to think about what I could read and report on next. And in the meantime, everyone enjoy your day, enjoy your week, and I will see you next time.